Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is inviting the light. Sometimes it feels like we're surrounded by darkness. And what we're going to look at is how we can shift the situational dynamics and the energetic dynamics by inviting the light. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells and your molecules and your electrons, lighting you up from the inside out, creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling. And let's bring ourselves present right here, right now. So welcome. Let's see. I am not certain that I just want to check to make sure that we're live on Facebook. Just checking to see if there are any technical issues that we might be contending with. And let's see. No, it looks like we're good. How awesome is that? Great way to start the week. And if you're putting comments in the chat and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see you. So you might want to head over to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and you can put your comments in there and I should be able to see them, hopefully. But realize I'm not ignoring you. The only reason I wouldn't be responding to your comments is that I simply don't see them. So welcome. And what we're talking about this morning is inviting the light. And this conversation comes from a conversation that I had yesterday. I am so fascinated by, well, let me back up. I have had an incredible gift of being able to meet for the past several weeks on Sundays with a friend who is a Torah scholar and a Hebrew scholar. And I'm not religious, although I consider myself deeply spiritual, but there's a magic about the Hebrew language and the Hebrew letters and the Torah, which is, that it's a richly encoded document that exists on multitudes of levels. And this is something that, is studied through a discipline called Kabbalah, to be looking at all the different levels of information that is in the Torah. And it's so fascinating. Anyway, we start the primary prayer, or a foundational prayer in Jewish tradition, is the Shema. And it's typically, the first portion of it is typically translated as Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is the Hear, O Israel, blessed art thou, O Lord our God, the Lord is one. And so yesterday we were looking at the word Shema and the letters that that create it. And it was so fascinating to me, the depth of the translation and how aligned it is with so much of what we talk about here. But the first word is Shema, and rather than hear, or in addition to hear, it's talking about emptying your cup, and creating an openness to receive the life-giving waters, the waters of life. So I want to let you guys know that I'm not seeing any comments, and that's why I'm not responding. So I don't know what's up with this morning, but hopefully all is good. Anyway, so when we look at the configuration of the letters and what the individual letters mean and what the implications of are all these of the word, I just thought that that's so beautiful, because when we talk about transformation, we talk about presence, and something that we could consider nullification of self, like being transparent, allowing light to flow through us. And so, and to be a vehicle of that light, right? So when we talk today about inviting the light, I think what we're doing is, like, let's say we're experiencing being surrounded by darkness. If we're, there are times when we fall into deep despair, and everywhere we look, there's darkness, where the world is just not a safe place or a healthy place or a place that we even want to live in, where there's so much pain and suffering and darkness. And so in these times when we invite the light, what I believe we get to do first is to create an emptiness, to allow ourselves to release the perception of darkness, to make a dynamic move internally from being overwhelmed by these ideas that are so powerfully overtaking us, to step back for a moment and invite the light. And I believe that, I do believe that light trumps dark every time. And it takes a deliberate and conscious effort to invite that light, to presence ourselves to that light. And that effort is something that will serve us in shifting the experience of our reality. And when we shift the experience of our reality, then we are shifting our dynamic, we're shifting our behavior, we're shifting the way that people will interact with us, because our behavior is different. So again, I'm not seeing any comments, so I apologize if you're commenting and not being responded to. But I just love this idea of emptying the vessel in order to be able to receive. Like, you can't put anything in a full cup. I think there's a Zen story about this person who went to the Zen master looking for enlightenment, and the Zen master was pouring tea, and the cup got full, and the Zen master kept pouring the tea, and the tea was overflowing, and and the the message was that the person who was coming as the student was already a full cup, and therefore could not receive the 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 gift of the message. And I think that when we feel surrounded by darkness, we've filled our cup with that darkness. And I do believe that the light can displace the darkness, and it helps if we can recognize that that's what's there, and make a conscious and deliberate choice to suspend those notions and to deliberately turn our focus to another perspective. And it's so fascinating to me, having been through times in my life where it felt like there was nothing but darkness. It really, in those moments, hadn't occurred to me that I could shift my focus, because it felt like a reality. And I'm not sure how, in those moments when we're so immersed in the moment's experience of life, when we're so immersed that we have no perspective. I don't know what it takes to be able to step back. Maybe it takes somebody saying, hey, there's an opportunity to step back from this, to recognize that we're creating it. Maybe it's a moment of grace where something occurs in our experience that gives us a moment of like a pinch to say, hey, wake up. We're immersed in a creation of our own making to a certain degree. And that's not to say there aren't plenty of things in the world that could justify finally, Rosalind, so good to have you here with us this morning. Thank you for chiming in. At least I know that things are working. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you. Welcome. So we're talking about inviting the light. And I know in moments of darkness, oftentimes we feel so surrounded that we pray for change. We pray for relief. And I'm wondering if we can, in those prayers, I think oftentimes what we're doing is reinforcing the darkness, by saying, please, lift this darkness, while we're affirming that the darkness is there, right? So what we can be doing instead is to be putting our attention as a prayer, not as a request and a plea, but as a shift of focus into the light, that we can be. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about inviting the light, and light dispels darkness. And so really, truly, by putting our attention on light, on the things that are light, by shifting our focus onto something that is uplifting, that is, even if it's just the smallest bit, to start shifting our energy. That shift of focus, that intentionality in itself is a prayer, and it's a more effective prayer than asking for something to go away. You know, if I'm asking for something to go away, I'm affirming that thing over and over instead of putting my focus on what I'm desiring. And if I'm feeling overwhelmed by darkness, what I get to do is to choose to put my attention on the light. And that's an invitation for that light. That's the act of prayer. I think the effective act of prayer answers itself. And what I mean by that is when we're asking for the light, we're putting our attention on the light. When we invite the light in, when we are looking for things that are of light, we are dispelling the darkness. And there's a nuance there. And it's the access to manifestation, in fact. Good morning, Elaine. It's wonderful to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about inviting the light. And I guess right now we're talking about the nature of prayer and manifestation, that that some traditional prayers or our traditional way of thinking about prayer is asking for help or asking for an end to a particular circumstance, rather than putting our attention on inviting the desired circumstance in and offering ourselves an experience of it. And so when we are feeling overwhelmed by darkness, if we can reshift our focus to at least find some spark of light somewhere, what we put our attention on will magnify. And so by in the darkness, invoking the light is what will dispel that darkness. You know, so I guess the foundational question is, how do we get to that place where we can recognize that we're in darkness, and in that recognition, choose light, choose a better or a more desirable outcome for ourselves. And finding these inroads into our beingness, I guess that is very much the part of the road to mastery, you know, is to be able to be having the experiences that we have without those experiences having us. And to be able to have a view from outside that experience of what its dynamics might be. So Rosalind says, I practice meditation with Master Ko. He talks for 20 minutes about a subject, drawing attention to how there is tension in the body, visualizing breathing in green or pink light, depending on what you desire, seeing it flush out negativity and areas of tension, and then breathing in bright white light to replace the void areas. He activates the heart first, holding a loving thought like an animal hugging you. That's beautiful, Rosalind. Thank you so much for sharing it and sharing it so well so that each of us could implement that technique if we wanted to from your explanation. So um, talking about a subject or putting our attention on a subject, noticing the experience in our body, breathing in green or pink light, depending on what you desire, and allowing that to flush the negativity. And then breathing in white light to replace the void areas. That's beautiful. Activating the heart first. So it's interesting that there's a lot of similarity between what you're saying and the core connection work I do, insofar as experiencing the experience of whatever's going on in the body. And that's another way to be able to move energy, to move our beliefs, to move our emotions, is to allow ourselves to experience them. And part of allowing ourselves to experience them is not judging them, but being present to, well, what's going on in my body? Where do I feel that? And breathing into that sensation to allow yourself to truly experience it. My experience so far is saying that when we do that, those tensions and those emotions also start moving. So we're talking about inviting in the light. And there are a multitude of ways that we can invite in the light. One is by identifying areas of darkness that we might be experiencing in our body and bringing light into those areas. So that might be a more immediate way even than trying to contend with what we're perceiving as the evils of the world. Sometimes it's harder to address that, but if we can start with where there might be darkness in our bodies and call light into those places, that can start creating a movement of toward the light in our consciousness as well. So if we recognize that when we're focused on darkness, we're embodying that darkness in some way, shape, or form, and if we can identify that in our own body and being, then put our attention on that more directly, then it can free it up. It can start moving that energy, which then can shift our perception. And it's not that the circumstances that we perceived as dark go away necessarily. It's that our relationship to those experiences shifts, so that rather than the darkness overtaking us, we then have the ability to shift our experience and to then be creating more light. I think that this is a conversation that is really important for this time on our planet, because it does feel like there is a growing polarity. I mean, at least we see that it's more visible, the polarities. And as light workers, so to speak, we're called upon to be able to find ways to maintain and expand the light. And the way that we do that is through carrying light ourselves, and to not fall prey, so to speak, to the darkness. And it takes a deliberate, conscious, courageous effort to be rallying the light sometimes. You know, it's like being on the hamster wheel, and if you stop running, then the hamster wheel turns around and around with, where you just end up spinning. And so the question is, how do we choose the higher ground? You know, when we're triggered, when we're falling into darkness, when we're not as resilient as we might normally be, how do we replenish ourselves with the light? And the answer is to remember, and to remember that we have the opportunity to choose. In fact, we're always choosing. And the thing is that oftentimes those choices are not conscious. And so we end up on a treadmill, so to speak, that's going in a direction that we're not really consciously, deliberately choosing. And so if we can remind ourselves to come back to choice, and what am I choosing this moment? What am I choosing this moment? One way to do that is to even set alarms, you know, for every hour or every half hour or every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes, depending on what kind of circumstance you're in and how often you need to be reminded to choose the light, you know, to find something that is something that lifts your spirits. So Rosalind says, sunflowers are one of the sun's energetic representations on the earth, and their beauty attracts humans to the positive energy they offer. I love starting my day surrounded by all of you. Thank you for being sunflowers in my life. Rosalind, that's such a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. Thank you for that. And that's bringing light. Dido says, yes, to remember is to make ourselves more, oops, my backdrop fell. And so now you see my office. That's so funny. Make ourselves more whole again. That's really, really interesting, the timing of that, right? And Elaine says, I surrender to the source of all creation of life within me and trust the process. For me, there's no good or bad, no difference between darkness and light, for all is energy flowing in and out of form, no judgment needed. I do nothing, as I know I am the source of life itself. That's beautiful, Elaine. So you're being the channel for beingness. You know, so before creation, there was nothingness, and it was all one. And then, you know, then came, there was light, but there was no source of light. And I wasn't aware of this. I'm not a Bible person. I'm not in any way a Bible scholar, but anyway, then there became the sources of light, the sun and the moon, for instance, supposedly. Anyway, it's interesting because yes, we are all one, and yes, we are polarities. So in this manifestation, in any case, I've got to go because I've got an appointment, and I love you guys so much, and I so appreciate you and these morning conversations. So much love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I hope to see you again here really, really soon. So much love